My friends, get ready for a breakdown of the coldest, most calculated and devastating operation the Middle East has witnessed in recent decades. The most heavily defended airspace on the planet has just been breached, but there was no sound of initial explosions. There was silence. Iran was left completely blind. What happened in the last 12 hours in the waters of the Persian Gulf was not just a common border retaliation. It was a complete and surgical sensory amputation. While the world slept, the United States decided that the Iranian regime simply no longer had the geopolitical right to see. I bring the data and the details about how Western forces rewrote the laws of electronic warfare in the dark. Shield your mind, because the balance of power in the Strait of Hormuz was crushed by an invisible force, the true eclipse of the strait. It all started when Iran crossed the ultimate red line on Monday night, exactly at 7:33 p.m. A Shahed armed one-way attack drone hit an American Army AH-64 Apache attack helicopter head-on, operated by elite aviation units working together with the naval fleet in Oman. You know that, I already mentioned it. In the previous video, the impact threw the multi-million-dollar aircraft straight into the dark waters at the entrance of the maritime choke point. And just so it doesn't go unnoticed, Apache cost $35 million, my friends. And an Iranian drone, well, from $20,000 to $50,000, look at the size of the loss. But in the middle of a psychological manipulation campaign, the officials in Tehran rushed to state media to do the classic gaslighting. They're trying to convince you that the sun isn't shining while the sky is on fire, swearing up and down that the Apache crashed on its own due to maintenance issues and that their armed Shahed drones were flying in the area, just doing real estate surveys or collecting images for an architecture project on the coast of Oman. But the commander-in-chief in Washington had had enough. The board shifted at the speed of light, because this was the collapse of a truce that had been falling apart since April 8th. Like a cinematic NASCAR racing accident where everyone keeps staring because the destruction is so immense that you just can't look away. And to understand the level of humiliation imposed on the Ayatollahs regime, you need to realize that the American response broke the historical pattern of rescue missions. Even before the first bomb hit the ground, look at what happened. The two Apache pilots managed to get out of the cockpit, but they were left floating at night in Iran's backyard. In the 20 kilometers of salt water that are the most heavily guarded on the planet, infested with sea mines and among the most dangerous on today's map. In any previous war, the military command would have had to send a manned helicopter or a special forces team on a suicide rescue mission, giving Iran a second easy target to claim. Or the capture of high-value political hostages at the negotiating table. You who have been following me already know this. The Pentagon has proven that it no longer needs flesh and blood heroes for rescue missions in hostile waters. They have robots and algorithms. The rescue that pulled the aviators out of the water in less than 2 hours, safely and without a scratch, was carried out by an unmanned surface maritime drone from Task Force 59. The Artificial Intelligence Division of the 5th Fleet operated out of Bahrain. The American pilots didn't see human faces in the darkness, only infrared cameras and mechanical support arms designed by code. My friends, the United States recovered what was theirs right in front of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard without risking the life of any other sailor. And the worst part for Tehran, Iran tried to puff up its chest saying it shot down the aircraft inside its exclusion zone. That's a lie. Physical geography exposes the bluff. The Apache was hit on the coast of Oman on the opposite side of the strait, where Iranian batteries don't actually have the range. The regime lied, defying the facts on the map to hide that the retaliatory strike that followed was triggered by Israel's strategic desperation the day before. On Sunday, Iran launched missiles at Israeli territory in response to the attacks against Hezbollah in Beirut. And on Monday, Israel responded decisively by pulverizing Iran's main central petrochemical plants, destroying the chemical compounds used in the manufacture of ballistic missiles. It was against this backdrop of destruction that American fighter jets took off at 5 p.m. yesterday to blind the regime. But before I tell you why Iran deeply regretted shooting down that helicopter, subscribe to the channel, turn on the notification bell, and like the video. It takes a lot of work to make. My friends, the air raid sent by the Pentagon was not a crude or random bombing. The American fighter jets invaded the most heavily defended airspace in the Middle East, carrying out a surgically orchestrated suppression of integrated air defenses led by EAD electronic warfare platforms, EA-18G Growler from the United States Navy. And in the technical jargon of fighter pilots, the aggressive electronic attack that saturates and fries the adversary's sensors goes by the codename Music. The Growlers entered the arena, emitting a barrage of digital static on enemy frequencies. The armed forces operators often joke that this music is the equivalent of retuning Iran's radars. To listen to heavy classics from AC/DC, or the psychedelic sounds of Pink Floyd, or the repetitive electronic beats of Daft Punk, and at maximum volume. But this music isn't meant for the ears. It's digital poison, blinding scanning screens, taking down low-frequency cell phone communications, and it leaves the command centers completely down, isolating the island bases from the central command in Tehran. Do you get the move? Iran tried to defend itself using the so-called delay tactic. That's a well-known maneuver where the radar operators keep their systems turned off and hidden, waiting for the Western fighters to fly overhead. Then they turn on the emitters at the last second, trying to catch the pilots by surprise. The same treacherous tactic they used in the past against the F-15E fighters. They're the ones who went down. Yes, my friends. The fatal mistake of the generals in Tehran was forgetting that the United States already knew every inch of their electronic spectrum. And right behind the Growlers, flying in pairs in the hunter-killer system, came the F-16 CJ fighters of the U.S. Air Force. The Pentagon's dedicated radar hunters, the F-16 CJ carries the HTS pod, an advanced sensor that can sniff out and accurately geolocate the enemy's radio signature, even if it's hidden behind massive mountains or concrete fortifications. At the exact moment the Iranians blinked their screens to try to aim, the F-16 CJ fired the AGM-88 HARM missile. This missile locks onto the source of emission. If the Iranian operator panicked halfway and turned off the device to break the tracking, the HARM would memorize the antenna's geographic coordinates and pulverize the entire base with millimetric precision. Now stop and think with me. If the goal of the fighter jets was just to give a political response to calm American public opinion, then why? The Pentagon ignored power plants and civilian bridges to focus 100% of its firepower on isolated sensors on the islands, my friends. The destruction carried out by the precision missiles of the F-16 CJ and the Strike Eagle fighters did not target symbolic targets or civilian infrastructure out of revenge. The American military command aimed to surgically remove the eyes and ears of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard, destroying their ability to monitor international ships and alert their Mosquito fleet. And here are the facts and details about the 4 strategic geographic targets that were completely wiped out in the eclipse of the Strait. There you go, straight men. Production, put the map on the screen. The first target was the Bandar Abbas base, the logistical heart and the central military port of the Revolutionary Guard. There, American bombs pulverized the ground control stations and surveillance radars of the S-75 anti-aircraft missile system, known in the West as the SA-2. It was these installations, which looked like a huge strategic target on satellite imagery, that detected air movement in the Gulf. The second point that was taken out was Jask Airport, the nerve center of communication on the coast. The fighter jets wiped out the giant radar dishes and the transmission antennas that were pointed directly at the shipping channel. The third target was the naval base in the province of Homurza, a complex filled with ammunition bunkers and anti-aircraft artillery, where the large radio control tower was brought down. Finally, the fourth target was the radar complex on Kesha Island and on Rangam Island, the highest points of the strait used to detect the approach of commercial ships. The hangars that housed the observation drones were hit twice to ensure that monitoring of the strait was completely eliminated. But what nobody told you is that while the antennas were exploding in the darkness, the human intelligence network infiltrated within Iran's own territory had already mapped and delivered the coordinates of each bunker months earlier to Pentagon analysts. And about this, there's a fantastic series that I'll recommend to you at the end of this video. But moving on, the American fighter jets cleared Iran's electronic battlefield in just one night and didn't even leave a phone number. By sparing the power plants and bridges of Bandar Abbas, the United States sent a silent message at the negotiating table. We know exactly where you live. We know every critical infrastructure, and we're just choosing what to wipe out first if you keep bluffing. The national news doesn't mention that. While Iran was suffering a sensory blackout in Hormuz, the global summary points out that the eastern flank in Europe has reached a critical alert state. NATO has just engaged in real kinetic action and fired a combat shot over Allied territory. A Rafale fighter jet from the French Air Force, operating under direct orders from the Unified Command of the Alliance, shot down a large unidentified drone. At the moment, it was crossing the borders and invading Latvian airspace. And this live fire incident happened while Russia, right next door, was starting military exercises with Su-24 heavy bombers and Su-30 tactical fighters from its Baltic fleet operating out of the isolated Kaliningrad base. The eastern flank became extremely unstable and reactive. Now think with me. Do you think the current military structure of the West is ready to handle simultaneous conflicts in the Persian Gulf and on Europe's borders without needing a radical change in command? It's because of this pressure on multiple fronts that the Pentagon is secretly designing the biggest structural overhaul of its forces in decades. The plan calls for reducing the 11 global combatant commands to just 8 integrated structures. The top leadership will unify CENTCOM in the Middle East, EUCOM in Europe, and AFRICOM in Africa under a single giant command called the United States International Command. At the same time, NORDCOM and SOLTCOM will be merged to create the Americas Command. My friends, this involves Brazil as well as part of integrating the defense of the Western Hemisphere. As part of this massive organization carried out in the midst of the gunfire, elite squadrons such as the 42nd Test and Evaluation Squadron at Nellis Air Force Base in Nevada are changing roles to focus on electronic saturation doctrines. The world is preparing for a global-scale war that no longer fits on traditional maps, ensuring that Central Command has many more resources and ships at its disposal. Now, to try to hide the humiliation of having its coastal radars destroyed and shut down, Iran's rhetoric machine has gone into full afterburner mode. Iran's Foreign Minister Aragashi spent the entire night on the phone desperately calling Saudi Arabia and Turkey, crying about the inherent right of self-defense and promising retaliatory actions against Western forces. And in practice, the regime's military reaction was a real ballistic tantrum. They fired a salvo of more than 20 ballistic missiles at the Al-Azraq Air Base in Jordan, the famous Al-Malfaq al-Salti base, which houses the American F-35 fighter jets, and they launched projectiles toward Kuwait, out of pure stubbornness and to make sure the neighbor wasn't left off the list. They even spread the lie that they had shot down an American MQ-9 Reaper drone that same night, a claim the Pentagon immediately dismissed as a smokescreen. The result of this display of desperation was an international embarrassment, a complete 0 out of 20. The defense batteries of Jordan, Bahrain, and Kuwait intercepted absolutely all the ballistic missiles in the air. The Middle East bully has been brought down. And what was left was a toxic ex-girlfriend trying to get attention, throwing firecrackers in the neighbor's yard. Aragashi tried to play the victim on the calls, but the response from the Arab countries was immediate. Kuwait, Bahrain, and Jordan issued joint official statements publicly condemning Iran for firing explosives at their borders. Tehran's strategy of trying to create a barrier against the West ended up isolating the regime itself and uniting the Persian Gulf against the Ayatollahs. The humiliation suffered by the Revolutionary Guard was so astonishing that, if we were to translate the atmosphere of despair that took over Iran's barracks, today, it would look like that typical condo meeting where the manager tries to convince the residents that the roof isn't collapsing after it already caved in. The report from the Iranian sergeants arriving at the Central Committee table in Tehran would be exactly like this. Boss, our plan to capture the American Apache pilots with our fleet of Mosquitoes looked great on paper, and the regime's HR had promised that we would destroy 2 United States Navy destroyers. The problem is they forgot to tell our team that the Pentagon now uses metal robots. A ghost ship that, guided by code, sped past our speedboats, picked up the pilots from the water in 2 hours and disappeared without a trace. And when our team turned on the radar screens on the islands to try to understand what was happening, the American jets injected electronic signals into our frequency, which sounded like loud heavy metal, fried our computers, and made all our SC-75 missile antennas go boom one after another. The board held a TV press conference insisting the sun hadn't disappeared.
Jurando que o sol não sumiu.
To boost the soldiers' morale, they sent a truckload of free billboards with the Supreme Leader's photo for us to put up at every roundabout in Tehran. Summary of our shift: we're here, completely blind in the dark, unable to see a hand in front of our face. And our only big job left is to scare civilian cargo ships. Unarmed, pretending we're tough and not crying in private. Yeah, my friends. Now, the truth has a muscle that no state agency in Tehran or propaganda campaign can distort. And the outcome of this operation proved that control over the world's economic bottlenecks is decided by radio frequency, signal engineering, and algorithm speed. Even before the first bomb touched the ground, the era of tolerance for the Revolutionary Guard's bluffs collided head-on with the West's new doctrine of force. President Trump was surgical when he put the report on the negotiating table. Iran is all talk. Their naval and air forces are defeated in the electronic field, and the price for delaying agreements will be paid with the destruction of their remaining military infrastructure. Now, the question is whether the Supreme Leader will accept the diplomatic off-ramp offered by Qatar to try to release their frozen assets. Or will we see the Pentagon's target map completely cleared in the coming weeks through new precision strikes? And in the face of this entire electronic warfare autopsy and the technical blackout imposed on the regime, I have a surgical question for you to separate the elite analysts from the ordinary viewers who only consume the prepackaged narrative of the mainstream media. Do you believe that the total blindness caused to Iran's radars was an eclipse move of the Strait, planned to consolidate sovereignty and peace through the technological strength of autonomous networks? Or is all of this just the prelude to an inevitable escalation that will drag the world into a global-scale conflict? If you understood that modern warfare is won on the radio frequency before the first bomb falls, write in the comments, is the expression "eclipse of the Strait" a code? Yes. But if you see the movement as the spark for a total rupture that will set the Gulf on fire, leave your comment and take part in this intelligence inventory below. My friends, the truth is that you can't rely on traditional platforms and the mainstream media that follow the system's playbook to understand the real defense dynamics that shape the global balance of power. And if you want access to command-level depth without censorship, without filters, and without that armchair take pushed by ordinary TV newsrooms, you need to be part of our intelligence bunker. The link is right now in the pinned comment in the video description and also in the QR code that appears on your screen. Come and check out our exclusive strategic intelligence platform and our private channel with series and documentaries focused on pure geopolitics. Inside, you join more than 3,000 elite analysts who understood that free information has a cost and decided to support independent truth here. Completely free from the filters of the old media. You know, we're on rented ground, so come to our intelligence hub. We're waiting for you there. And we've also created a channel for series and movies. The link is in the description, in the first pinned comment, and in the card that will appear on your screen. And I promised we're going to give you a fantastic recommendation for something to watch about the intelligence services inside Iran. Yes, the series is called Tehran. Yes, Tehran is the name of the Iranian capital. It's available on Apple TV, and we review it on our series and movies channel that's appearing on your screen right now. So go check out this series, I guarantee it. It's awesome. My friends and I left a bonus for you who stayed until the end watching this video. We just created the biggest intelligence movement here on YouTube. I, Shimon Oliveira, just started a new project with my colleague Davi Al-Meskani from the Viva Israel channel. Yes. My friends, you will be rewarded with this explosive content, so I have a challenge for you. The name of our new joint channel where we will present our analyses together is called Punto de Ruptura. And there we will bring exclusive analyses combining our minds with the best. And we are launching a challenge. Subscribe now to this new channel and help us reach a record number. 100,000 subscribers in 30 days. 100,000 subscribers in 30 days. And we will reward you with a great gift. So go there now and say, I came because of Shimon Oliveira. I came because of Davi from Viva Israel. All right, guys, now is the best time. Subscribe to the channel, turn on the notification bell, like the video, shield your mind. I'm Shimon Oliveira, and I'll see you in the next video. See you then.